So I'll quickly go through this. I don't have any slides or anything. I've been rethinking build systems. The last talk that I gave at Meta Refresh was about build systems. And I'm starting to get to this place, even since I've been exploring micro frameworks and stuff like that, that we have too much code, we have too much frameworks, and I want to start build. Node has this really nice community around really tiny modules. So you take the ones you want and you stitch them together. So yeah, I've been thinking about build systems, and I've been thinking about DSLs, about how I would construct what a build system that I make, what it would look like and how people would use it. So instead of starting like down from the code and then working upwards towards the use case, I actually started what I would want a build system to look like. And when you're talking about build systems, or essentially task systems, that's what they are, right? You have tasks, you take a bunch of stuff, do something to it and pass on the results. And build systems, the nice thing is that majorly, most use cases revolves around a set of files. So for example, you'll take a bunch of JavaScript files, you'll compress it, you might analyze it, and you'll write it to its destination. You might want to maintain a dependency graph somewhere. CSS, something similar. You might want to upload all your files to S3 and get a token back and do a bunch of stuff. So down to that, wait, let me save this as a JS file first. That's a nice file name. So if I had to, like, I want to define a task. Let's say my task would be, I'd call it analyze, and let's say that function will get a callback, and I will do a bunch of stuff, and when I'm done with it, I'll call done. And let's say that on that object, inside the scope of that object, I'll have something called this.files, which will point to all the files at that point of time. So, and let's say that let's say I could filter down on an array, I would take out only the .js files. This pseudo-ish code, but this would be nice. Like for example, I would then have an analyze task that just does this, and then I would consume it in some way. How would I consume it? If I were writing a build file, I want to do something like this. For example, k dot filter. Let's say I want to use a regex on JS files. I want to compress it, and well, let's say I want to read all the file contents first of read this. Sorry. Compress dot write. This is what I want my build file to look like. I don't want to give configs, I want to write my build files as code. This is a problem with Grunt and Yeoman and Jake. You end up writing these big config files and it's very hard to grok, and it has a whole bunch of framework specific stuff. But I want to be able to define like my own tasks, and I want them to be available as actions. I want to use a deferred APIs, and this is what I want my entire build file to look like. Well, not my entire, but I might want to do a bunch of other stuff. So I've actually started work on this, and this works right now. Like the code for this actually works. Quick jump into the code. This is the majority of the task system. So I can say k.task, I can register a name which takes a function that takes a callback. Then internally, every time I create an instance with k, I just set up a task chain, I import all the tasks in. I have a little clone thing, so for example, you'll take a bunch of files, you'll clone it. With one clone, you will probably filter out the JS, you might want to filter out CSS, you might want to analyze the images. The config object for k is super minimal. Right now, I just accept. This is the only config that I accept for now, even though I said so. And it defaults to dot slash. So the idea generally with build systems is you start off with one folder of stuff. I give like one base folder. Usually it might be under, for example, you might say it will be under SRC, and you want all the build stuff to go under dist. That's fine, you set that up in the beginning and everything else takes care of itself. Back to this. So yeah, it does this. And then I have a bunch of sample tasks that I give. Mind you, no special syntax, nothing, it's just an object hash. For example, I have read, which reads a whole bunch of files. And on .files, I set the content as what I've just read from it. Filter takes a regex or a function. The others are not even implemented yet, but let's say I even have wait. So for example, if you're doing something, you want to wait for 5 seconds before moving on to the next step, that also works. You want to log in the middle, so you'll say .compress and then .log. I just compress some files. And so on, like I'll have concat and templating. I even have a simple one for command. For running a Unix command, This is actually like, I've been experimenting with this, and this is fun because now I can write things that I put in my make file or into a shell script. I can put those lines here, and again it nicely cascades down using deferreds. So I have K, which as a task system, I have a bunch of basic tasks, and then I introduce a deferred API into it. This is something I pulled from a YUI plugin. Again, this is not dependent on K. This is an interesting pattern that I learned. This actually, I would recommend that you go through the code. It takes a regular object that has functions on it that accept callbacks and creates a deferred version of it. So you don't have to worry about making promises and so on and so forth. As far as you're concerned, as long as you have a function that takes a callback and possibly takes error as a first argument and so on and so forth, so that you can activate failure callbacks. But yeah, I managed to pull this code out and I augment K with it. So now, as soon as I make the tasks, I have a pretty clean, easy deferred API automatically. No worrying about promises, nobody has to work with this thing. I also have coverage. This is another thing I want to share with you. I hope all of you are writing unit tests and being good children. Christmas is coming up. Right, so I'm using Mocha. Mocha is just the easiest unit test framework I've seen. You say describe K, inside that describe initialize. It should do a bunch of stuff. For a couple of asynchronous testing, and this is the most easy thing I've seen. For example, if you just send a function with a callback, Mocha analyzes that function, sees the arity of the function, and when you're done with your asynchronous thing, you say dot done. You just say done. That's it. That's how you do async testing. There's no spying on functions and so on and so forth. You don't want to ever do that. So I have tests, and then I want to show you my workflow quickly for it. So I set up my package.async file so that, wait, that's not it at all. So every time I'm working, I actually keep this on watch, so it goes through all my files, it runs all my tests. All the blue ones are ones that are not implemented yet. These are all green. I could make a test fail for you if you want, but what I actually want to show you is how many of you guys use coverage statistics? How many of you instrument your code and find out what your tests are covering? Nobody. Awesome. Nice. So now I've figured out a one-liner which takes a bunch of code, generates an instrumented version of it, runs your tests on it, then takes coverage reports, opens up a coverage.html, and then releases the instrumented code. So one line, the output of this is just one HTML file with your coverage, and I want to show you what it looks like. Yeah. So it does that, that's the one liner, it opens it up, and I have coverage statistics. So I have about 81% coverage on the whole. The red lines are the ones I don't have tests covering for yet. So for example, even my tasks, I don't really have any coverage yet. And that's it, that's my talk. This is all I have. So I want to show you what a sample thing is looking like. For example, this is just doodling code, this is nothing serious. But I have some stuff to show you that you can do compound tasks, and it looks really nice. Disregard the .d for now, that's how I set up the deferred. But let's say I have one task A, I have task B, then I have task C. Inside that I can say call A.B in a deferred fashion, and when I'm done, I say done. Again, no dependence on K or anything, so I registered my tasks, and then I can call C, it calls A, B in order, and logs done, and it just works. Questions?
What is GitHub version?
It's on GitHub. It's called K under my GitHub username /3.1. Let me type that out. http github.com/3.1/K. That's I have it under that right now. Very early days. This is just something I started working on a few days ago, but I thought I'd just share with you. Mostly I was excited about the unit test and the coverage, because just the process of writing the unit test I found 6 months, not exaggerating. And it's great, like that's really confidence boosting. That I wouldn't have even known it existed until like days later when I tried an edge case. But just writing a simple test case, and now when I'm writing stuff elsewhere and it breaks this, I immediately, for every bug that happens, I write a new test case. Stupidly trivial, and I see coverage, feel good about myself, and I can pass it on to the world.
Is the coverage only for Mocha?
No. So actually, JS coverage, it's done by the same guy who does Mocha, but it's not an only Mocha thing. It basically generates a coverage report in a bunch of standard formats. There are standard formats for coverage. So this one is something called JS coverage. I'll give you a link for that as well right now. Let's see if I can try remembering. His username is Vision Media, and it's called JS coverage. It's either called JS coverage or Node.js coverage. I don't remember. but it's just search for JS coverage Visual Media, I guess.
I've heard of JS.
Right, so Visual Media is the guy who's made the Express framework and Mocha and 20 other things.
Half of the GitHub.
Yeah, essentially half of Node modules are just under this guy. And he's some 22-year-old from Canada who has a pet ferret. It's weird. But yeah, very, very prolific. Okay, any more questions? Is that? I was under 10 minutes?
I think so.
So that's